to you, Paresh sir.
Hello, to another episode of In Conversation With. In Conversation With is a management series by CASI Global New York, where we invite senior professionals from across the world in search of executable advice. So today's seminar proposes to be very interesting. It promises to be very interesting. We have Nina from Slovenia, we have Ishan from Tamil Nadu, India, and we have Mark from US. So before we begin, let me make a small introduction. My name is Paresh. I represent CASI as a member of the board of directors. CASI is one of the world's largest platform for sustainability with a presence across 52 countries. We also run what is one of the world's largest volunteering platforms with a reach of over 3 million volunteers. Right. So let's begin with a small question and then we move on to the presentation and the chief guest for the day, Nena. My question to Nena is, Slovenia is one of the states, one of the countries in the world which has a separate department for blockchain and newer technologies, and that is very progressive. We are present in 52 countries, and we know for sure that not many countries are taking blockchain very seriously. So how did it begin? What all does Slovenia do in new technologies or blockchain?
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. First, tell me, please, can you hear me well?
Oh, yes.
Okay. Yeah, Slovenia was, I will go back to some historical facts. Slovenia in 2017, when a blockchain was a hype in Europe and in the world, Slovenia was one of the first countries that was globally recognized and that started to build the ecosystem for blockchain. So we started in 2017, and from that time on, we are just building and developing that ecosystem. We are developing the regulatory basis. We are developing the concept of the treating of the digital assets and so on. And in 2018, but first let me go back. In 2017, we launched Ljubljana Declaration, which was supporting blockchain activities in Slovenia. At that time, we achieved 5% of total global investment funding into Slovenian companies. And this was a motivation to go further. So after that, the declaration for blockchain on the European level was adopted, and European blockchain partnership was established. In 2018, we also created that project unit for blockchain, dedicated for that technology, which was very demanding and new in Europe, but we wanted to research how not only supporting the cryptocurrencies, but how would be or what mode of the application of blockchain would be useful to be introduced in industry. So in 2018, it was in summer, we created adopted action plan for blockchain, and it was world first strategic document for blockchain that was launched by any country. Okay, from that time on, we started also to support and to fund blockchain by our development money. So we launched one call for projects. We call them demo pilot projects, and we requested from the companies, and this was in 2018, from the large and conventional companies, to integrate all the advanced technologies. This is from AI to EOT, to VR, AR, and so on, big data, and also blockchain into their business plans, their business processes, and to pilot the new business process on blockchain. Now, what we have as a result, we have the projects on blockchain that are used in conventional companies to support their business models to be more efficient, to be more sustainable, for example, because we are talking today about sustainability. But on the other hand, we are also very active on the European level. As on the European level, we are building that European blockchain services infrastructure and also European use cases on that EPSI. In the same time, I became the head of delegation for Slovenia in UNC Fact, and we created a white paper which was called Technical Implications of Blockchain for SDGs. So we selected for each or for more than half of the SDGs, we selected use cases for made on blockchain. And there was a white paper launched also in 2018 from UNC Fact and UNC. And then we started to develop a blockchain cross-border infrastructure, which would also bring the global sustainability within that infrastructure and services that will be provided on blockchain. So we are just upgrading our activities. We will also adopt now that European package for DLT and digital finance package, which is based on blockchain, and we are still trying to find a way how to institutionalize digital identity, self-sovereign identity, which is also some legislatory challenge also for Europe and for the companies here. But in any case, we are going to build this thing up. And for
So I have a couple of follow-up questions on this. But before that, let me congratulate you, if I may. Your government has been very progressive on adopting the blockchain.
Yes.
Where very few governments back then were so confident, and they really put their money where their mouth is, if I may say so. So your government is one of the first governments and very progressive, if I may say, in adopting these blockchain technologies and trying to understand how to make people's life better, the general citizens' life better. Yeah. So before I go on to your presentation, I have a question for Ishan. Ishanji, are you there?
Yes, I'm there, Pareshji. Please go on.
Yeah. Ishanji, give me a short answer. And so that we can move on to the main presentations for the day. Now,
Sure.
you work for the government of Tamil Nadu in blockchain and e-governance.
That's correct, yes.
Now, India as such has not really been successful. Again, if I may say, it is a matter of opinion. When it comes to blockchain or cryptos or currencies at a government level. Yeah, and we are still struggling, unlike other countries like Brazil or Italy or even Turkey, trying to understand if we should use blockchain in land. Typically known as Che Bara Sat Bara in India. So for land uses or medical purposes. So how did the government of Tamil Nadu start this? Because after all, it's a government, So what made them start this as a government?
Sure. Thank you for the question, Pareshji. So I'll start with a slight difference of opinion. So I would say India is one of the hubs of blockchain, especially when it comes to crypto blockchain or public blockchains in India, right? A lot of the large startups such as Polygon, Instadap, etc., they run out of India. I would say that's a matter of pride for us. Coming to your question about why governments have been talking about adopting blockchain. Specifically, enterprise blockchain is something that found support from right from the top, right from the Honorable Prime Minister for a long time. And you've always had this discussion about using blockchain in e-governance for the last 6-7 years. In fact, we have also had policy documents being released by the center, by Ministry of IT and Electronics, as well as through our state and by Telangana as well, right? So there's always been an intent in policy to implement blockchain, especially for getting better public service delivery mechanisms. But apart from that, the reason more and more governments are starting to explore blockchain is that if you look at how e-governance services have evolved over the last decade, right? So the last decade, India has gone through this massive digitization of government services, where almost now everything is offered through a single portal in most states. They are now also opening up API sandboxes that developers can connect with, etc., so on and so forth, right? So the next leap is really how do you build services that span across various different departments or different states or different government entities. To do that, something that administrators have been understanding in the last 2 3 years or so is that it's impossible to do that without blockchain, because you need to have a proven anchor that you can use for trusting data whenever you are sharing it between organizations. You need to have a way to establish non-repudiation. So this intent has already been there, and I would say for the last 2 3 years, administrators have understood the need for the technology as well, especially to move on to this next phase of governance. Coming to Tamil Nadu, so when we were implementing blockchain in Tamil Nadu, like the other governments around the world, we also started with a few of the common use cases such as education certificates, tracking, let's say, demographic data, and so on and so forth. And something I really liked in Nina's talk is that it really talks about where blockchain is going right now. So if you look at how governments are evolving, how governments using blockchain is evolving, governments are now moving towards general purpose platforms. So they understand that a lot of the moving parts in these systems are the same. So instead of building individual use cases, what you should really be doing is building these general purpose platforms. And this is an endeavor Tamil Nadu picked up around 2 years back. So we committed to building a platform which we are calling Nambike, which is the rough translation for blockchain in Tamil. We have also released a policy that goes hand in hand with this platform, which focuses on capacity building. It focuses on educating the government department. It focuses on like creating a blockchain syllabus for higher education, etc., and so on and so forth. So yeah, that's really how Tamil Nadu got into blockchain and the road we are looking at ahead. Thank you, Paresh.
Interesting. Interesting. I have a guest today who has worked on the West Bengal government. So we
Right.
will go on to him in some time. Before that, I have a small question for Mark. Mark, you represent the government, blockchain association as a chief data officer. So
Yeah, that's correct.
my question is, in fact, I have two questions for you. One, within blockchain applications, and there are so many applications of blockchain. Which one particular application do you think would be very important from governance or government point of view?
Oh, geez, yeah. Again, there are a lot of applications of the blockchain, right? But there's a couple. If you I put my magic hat on, look forward into the future. Obviously, first of all, it's sustainability, right? But the biggest one for governments, especially the regulators, has to be with how do you regulate? How do you create a regulatory framework or information framework to include the cryptocurrency networks into the banking system, right? That's probably one of the biggest ones. How do you regulate that? And I know India, the Ministry of Finance and the Central Bank of India are actually, I don't know if they agree on it, but they're also struggling with the same thing. But the biggest thing is you do have these DeFi applications. How do you then create a regulatory framework that's doesn't hamper innovation, but embraces innovation, right? And has the ability to have consumer protection, especially from a cybersecurity standpoint. So that's very big too. There's a lot of things we can talk about, but I think the biggest one has to do with how do you regulate and ensure consumer protection and do not hamper innovation with this type of technology, blockchain technology, and the crypto networks.
That is a very interesting opinion. We will, I of course have follow-up questions for that. Let's move on to the chief guest for the day and her views, our presentation. Nena, over to you, please, for a presentation.
Yes, thank you very much. Maybe I would respond to the question from the previous speaker. how we can regulate and how not to beat the innovation is maybe I will tell you something about this in the later stage, but we faced this problem and we started to think about innovative procurement, and this is the way how we can maybe go hand in hand with innovative processes, but also to change the regulation in this way. And maybe we can talk about this a little bit later. Now I want to present you what we did for international community. And what was our motive, how to approach to this. And this is also about the legislatory issues and about the regulatory issues. As I said, 2 years ago, we started with the project UNC Fact Chain. We were motivated by that white paper for SDGs that we were preparing. And the other issue was that we realized that much more challenges will be in cross-border interoperability for any blockchain infrastructure. So how we approached, I will show you now one table. We analyzed first legal interoperability, then governance, and then technical interoperability. And we received a lot of very, very interesting findings, which I will present later. But this can be also the contribution to each regulatory and legal process that is being run on the level of a certain country. First, we faced legal interoperability, and then we also created some questionnaires for governments, for companies, for blockchain actors, stakeholders, and so on. And we also identify, for example, use cases and analyze those use cases in accordance with that interoperability issues. And there were very, very interesting findings. So first, we faced the challenges for legal interoperability. For example, this was legal certainty, this was GDPR-related issues, this was conflict of laws in different jurisdictions for that cross-border interoperability. Then we faced some challenges for governance interoperability. Those were governance models, market-related issues, and also for technical interoperability, which was the number of transactions, for example, which can be cleared in different electronic, conventional electronic payments, and maybe a radical transformation in energy market in very short period of time. So we tried to define the solutions for legal interoperability. And this is the question also regarding the last question that was said. So if we try to find them for energy efficiency, for example, for sustainability of energy efficient projects for interoperability, then the solutions could be shaped in this way. Just a moment. First, we need to define trusted data and identity sources and their locations for smart contract validation and execution. Further, detailed determination of trust-related aspects. Semantic interoperability, so that machines speak the same language. Regulatory guidances. We, for example, went in a way how to reshape the regulatory environment to be for blockchain to be better integrated into advanced regulatory solutions. And in the later stage, we decided to create a kind of a kind of technological lab, a sandbox, which will put together all the regulators for energy efficiency, for example, all the companies that have an issue which would want to develop something on blockchain but do not have energy efficient solution, and then blockchain would help them, but with the regulatory based solutions. And then we are approaching now to create that regulatory sandbox, for example, for energy efficiency, that will also support the regulators to embrace these new technological or innovative technological solutions. For example, then for governance interoperability, for energy efficiency was that the model to be defined for each community, for single mother blockchain network, interchain dispute resolution mechanisms, and again for technical this was a semantic issue and interoperability between blockchains. Why I'm talking about interoperability? Because European Commission and together with the member states, we are very much oriented into ensure interoperable infrastructures and also services on blockchain that can be public, that can be government used by the governments, for example, digital identity or diplomas on blockchain or traceability of documents on blockchain. And it all leads to sustainability. It all leads to simplification of procedures. It all leads to better trust and better traceability and security of the data, of the documents that we are dealing with on the level of the government. For example, we then analyzed the supply chain or value chain issues. This is also cross-border relevant, and this is also relevant for sustainability. So we identified for example, challenges within legal interoperability, which is identification of data involved, complexity of supply chains, competition law, for example, for supply chain tracking, because we have here fear of monopoly. And this is also concerned with consumer protection and the Digital Market Act, what we are now transferring into our national legislation on the European level. So then sensitivity of the information we were facing also in the that legal issue on interoperability. Further, for governance and the governance models for that governance interoperability, two things are very important. First, security on data access governance, so the protocols that shall be centralized. I'm sorry. Pričam čez 20 minut. 20 minut, prosim, da imam en speech tle. Čau. I'm sorry. And then with economic incentives, it is very important that all blockchain participants are provided with high degree of confidence and economically incentivized for participating in the program. Then feasibility of technology. This is for technological operations, of data flows between two-layer protocols, of interoperability by design. And what solutions did we get? The solutions were quite interesting, because first, a solution for legal interoperability to enable guidances for all parties that are participating in that permissioned blockchain across borders. Then encryption, which solves visibility issues. Then parts of information to be shared between parties and publicly shared. We also developed some solutions for governance interoperability. This nested encryption that can allow governance interoperability within hybrid ecosystem. Integration of API to link a legacy systems with the blockchains. This is what I was explaining earlier within that merging traditional companies with also the modern and innovative ones. Then building templating system for allowing blockchain participants to create a custom white label apps, for example, to structure data collection. And then solutions for technical interoperability. So we highlighted technical style approach, combination of certification and blockchain layer. These are very sophisticated things, but are very important for each government that wants to open the node, that issues within the use cases will be here to be very relevant for each use case. And then we analyzed also digital identity. It is also very important for consumer protection, for every issue that we are sharing with the authorities, with the government services, and with the citizens, because they are interacting through the government services. We have then again challenges related to GDPR, then challenges with multiple cross-platform DLT governance interoperability, and challenges with technical interoperability, how to interact between different DLT systems. The solutions were for legal interoperability, for example, the transactions that can be authorized by user, then no personal information that is located, because also EBSI, that the European Blockchain Services Infrastructure, is based on eIDAS and is based on avoiding personal information to be put on blockchain. Then for governance interoperability, we were facing the dilemma if choosing the platform that will be the most compatible and governance interoperable according to development needs or deployment needs. Then governance which is created up to down, so that we know which data can we provide on each level and which data remain unprovided. And definitely for technical interoperability, we have identity related information that can be also linked to digital identifiers, biometric, physical, descriptional, and everything. And here we also think about how to protect the consumers and so on. If I go further, I don't have it here within the presentation, but in any case, we with this particular case, to ensure the cross-border sustainability and interoperability, we wanted to achieve that every human being or every company that is loading its digital identity on the blockchain is secure enough, is within the legal framework, is regulatory compliant, for example, with the GDPR and eIDAS, and is interoperable in the way that is semantically it's totally recognizable through different blockchain and through the integration of different blockchain into unique one. This year we prepared a national recovery and resilience plan. And for the Mark that was mentioning that consumer protection and also the legislation and the regulatory environment, I have to say that we assumed two things relevant for blockchain. First was how to make efficient gatekeeper system to protect our consumers, our customers, from that monopolist networks or platforms that are abusing their market position. Okay, this was first. And the second, we will motivate our companies to adjust their business models using blockchain technology, also for the settlements for consumer protection. So on one hand, to make prosumers from the consumers, and on the other hand, to have a peer-to-peer interaction between them and consumers, so that communication and also the basis for innovation can be wider and bigger, and we can offer to the customers more and more quality services. So maybe I will finish here, and if you have any question, just please.
Thank you very much, Nana, for your presentation. One quick query: when you mention about interoperability between European Union, what happens to countries which are not in the European Union? How will your systems talk to, let's say, our systems in India or any other country? So, what is the plan on that? Is there a working committee working on that, or is that something that you want to work on?
There are two things. This is why I made the presentation of UNC Fact Chain, because this is exactly what we were thinking about. Okay, we have on the European level interoperable infrastructure, but for cross-border from Europe, we don't have anything. So this was the reason why we started to develop that UNC Fact Chain, because UNC Fact is UN Committee for Trade and Facilitation, and covers almost all the countries in the world. Okay, so with the development of this chain and with defining the challenges and trying to find the solution, we can find also the solution for interoperability of blockchain technology across or interregional and wider from the European, only the European space here in this region. Yeah.
Correct. I'll tell you why we are very keen on blockchain, or why we are at CASI, my company, we are very keen, because we are the world's largest platform for sustainability. And the next thing that we are doing is we are setting up an ESG exchange where any company from around the world can log in their non-financial reports, and then we move on to impact bond trading. So we want to go into impact bond trading, and we believe that's the future. Where we can digitize that. Sustainability plays, blockchain plays a very big role in sustainability, right from medical records, to gender diversity, to anything. It plays a very basic role, and it is the need of the hour from what our think tank believes, that we need to use blockchain for sustainability. And that is why there is a lot of interest from our side on blockchain. So that is something that we are working on. Of course, we have a lot more questions than answers today, but we are working on it.
But we shall maybe see how we can cooperate, because we have some technological solutions, and we were also thinking because Europe adopted the sustainable finance regulation. Okay. And it foresees making a platform, but we need to go one step further and define. Okay, you are telling about non-financial reporting. We were thinking also about financial reporting, because it can be a part of digital ID of the companies. And we are developing this digital ID of the companies. Here, maybe we can cooperate in very concrete case, because if you are building the platform for non-financial reporting, and if we are building that digital ID for companies that will contain all types of reporting, at least through the sources linked to the sources of reporting, then we can maybe build together some concrete platform on blockchain that will enable that digital identities to be recognized, to be kept on blockchain, to be for example, stored on blockchain, but the data will be accessible for that financial and non-financial reporting. So maybe
Absolutely,
this is the
absolutely.
sorry.
Absolutely, and I'm also happy to announce that we are tying up with Mazar. So Mazar is one of the largest audit firms in the world. They are from France. So
Super.
we already have a European touch to us. So two partners of Mazar are present today
Okay,
on this platform, Santosh and Sovayu. So
great.
we'll take it offline. I will definitely reach out to you and let's try and collaborate somewhere.
Yeah, we can do some collaboration. I will have to go in 30 minutes. So if you have any question
Absolutely.
for me, please just go on. Or
Yes,
maybe
yes.
we can continue with the other presentations. Thank
Yeah,
you.
we'll continue with the presentations, but I will definitely reach out to you. And I understand you have a busy schedule, but thank you very much for joining us today. It was an absolute pleasure to have you with us. Right, it's an
Thank you.
absolute pleasure.
It was an absolute pleasure to be here with you. Thank you.
So, Mark, let's move on to Mark. Mark, please tell us about your opinion on blockchain. What are your thoughts? What do you think is the future?
Oh yeah. So I do have a presentation, but I think I'm preaching to the choir now. With everybody understands what ESG is and what the benefits of blockchain is. But going back to what Nina was talking about, and this is fascinating. So when you build a system, and for people to follow the rules of the system, you actually build the rules into the system, right? When you have that rules into the system, everything is kind of easier. But having like Slovenia government create a blockchain solution, and maybe through smart contracts have apply different rules for different businesses, right, to work on. And I see the interoperability between Slovenia and another country, but building blockchain solutions for each parts of the government, I think it's a big lift. And the technology is still so new that I think we can get there. And I have it in my slide also that the old financial system, well, at least in the US, was built off bank runs and crises, right? But this new financial system that we're building, you can say, this part of blockchain, new financial system includes sustainability, but this new system that we're building is being carefully thought out. From example, everybody on the phone here is being carefully thought out and planned. So this new financial system is now going to include a lot of decisions that we want to have in this new financial system. We want to have the social aspect, the sustainability aspect to it. We want to have multilateral agreements, just like we talked about between India and Slovenia. So a lot of this stuff is being planned, and all the issues that we discover is going to be talked about, and we're going to have a better planned environment in the future. And I think this is just fascinating. I think what Nina talked about was really neat, and her solutions that they did from their white paper. It's very powerful. I think it's really good. It was really good to hear what she had to say. But going into the future, I think this new environment that we're designing will be beneficial. We just got to make the right decisions. Let's build it right this time instead of like last time to include everybody, have all inclusion. Shall I go into my presentation?
Oh, please, absolutely.
Yeah, let's do that. We'll say it might be kind of duplicative to what we heard today. So
we can run through your presentation a bit quickly because we have a lot of questions to ask you, about GBA and your work.
Oh, sure. Well, let's have
a look at your presentation also, please.
Yeah, it shouldn't be that long. So again, my name's Mark Matoy, and I'm Chief Data Officer for the Government Blockchain Association. And I just want to talk about ESG and blockchain. Again, I think it's kind of preached to the choir. Everybody knows this, but let me give you an example. So we're all going through COVID. We're still going through COVID, unfortunately. Everybody thought it was going to be a couple month thing, and everything was going to be fine. It was going to be gone. But if we see this, the impact of the global pandemic, COVID, really exposed how fragile and dependent government economies are, how we're dependent on each other. And U.S. has the U.S. dollars is prevalent around the country, and there's an old saying that when the U.S. Sneezes, the rest of the world catches the cold, right? Especially the developing economies. So we saw how through this pandemic how fragile that the economies are around the world. So the pandemic increased economic nationalism, and maybe for the right, but all the governments around the world had put out multi-million-dollar stimulus packages to prop up the economy, again, to make sure that their economies don't fail. So it was known to, they were doing the right thing to prop up the economies and help from a social aspect, help from stimulating the economy, making sure people get the vaccines. It had to be done. But we saw that this multi-million-dollar stimulus packages further hurt the global economy. And a lot of the countries are still trying to come out of it. Some of them rebound quickly. Some of them are still struggling with it. And then, as I just mentioned this before, that, the current financial system's based on crises and bank runs. But as we move forward, we're planning these approaches now. And I believe that this new environment is not only going to involve the cryptocurrency networks, but also the related technology like blockchain, but also local leadership, again, multilateral agreements. And here's the key here: sustainable development goals, right? We can build the sustainability and all of our countries' development goals into this new system. That includes the blockchain networks, includes the coin networks, right? The cryptocurrency networks. I think it's really good that we're having these conversations. It's very early on, but we're doing the right thing. We're planning this out. We're talking about it. We're trying to learn from our past mistakes. Just make sure that this environment we're building is going to be successful. It's going to help everybody, not just not just the corporations, but also the people that actually need it. So I'm really excited about this type of technology. So I don't know if we want to really get into ESG. So what's ESG? Environmental, social, corporate governance, right? It's essentially the evaluation metrics to measure a company's social and environmental sustainability. But why is it important, right? It was mandated for large and state-owned companies. For those that understand what's going on with ESG, it's for those large and state-owned companies right now. It's missing the small and medium-sized businesses. There's a lot of stuff that still needs to be done with ESG to make it actually useful, I guess you can say. It's mandatory only in a few countries: EU, United Kingdom, United States recently, China, and obviously India. And then Asia and other countries are starting to talk about this too. They see the importance in this, right? But there's many issues. There's still a lot of issues with ESG. There's no uniformity. There's lack of standards. There's lack of governance from the countries, and there's lack of consensus on what is this all about? What is ESG all about? So, and so why is it such a big thing right now? It's getting big. It's because investors are starting to consider the social responsibility, right, through investing in socially responsible companies, right? So in 2019, 2020, 88% of the investors have asked their investment firms, is ESG incorporated in their investment decisions? So you can see why this investing is starting to be a real big deal. And you can see from 2021 now into 2025, it's really going to get big from an ESG type of companies and sustainability investing. So investors understand, especially what happened during COVID, they understand they can have an impact, personal impact on sustainability and the environment and corporate governance of sustainability by investing in companies. Or not invest in those companies if they have a bad ESG rating. So the ESG rating. So that's one positive thing in it. Here's an example from MSCI, the 2021 trends. And you can see here, again, it talks about the social aspect of it. And in 2015 and 2016, you sort of saw those 2%, 1%. And this is all about bonds. And again, going back to the individuals, investors see that here's an example. The pandemic, again, we were making so many strides in wealth equality, and then the pandemic happened, and it just all threw it to nothing. The wealth gap has further divided, right? And you can't just work on individual companies to help them, provide some type of wealth and sustainability. It's just not the case anymore. So a lot of investors, a lot of individuals see that they can do it through social investing, as I said before. And you can see it. There's something called social bonds, and they're starting to create these and invest. They see that they can systemically have a better impact on the world, especially from the wealth gap standpoint, by investing in social bonds that are part of some type of social product, some type of social project, right, for sustainability. So you can see the investment. And again, just the big one is actually 2009 to 2020, how it jumped from 5 up to 15%. And this is in USD, so it's $350 billion. And again, you can see this trajectory is going to keep on going into the future, right? And this is very, very important. So blockchain technology, we all understand, how does this all tie in? We understand blockchain technology. We understand the cryptography behind blockchain, the secure communication, right? To, you don't know your adversaries out there in the internet, right? The hashing, actually, and it authenticates and provides the integrity throughout the network, right? Through the hashing aspect of it. The blockchain technology also offers transparency, verify and review all transactions. And also it's decentralized and distributed, right? There's no centralized authority, and it's peer-to-peer. So we understand the background behind the benefits of blockchain. But how does it fit into ESG? So with ESG, going back to what we talked about with COVID and investing, the blockchain can be used for financial inclusion, like microfinance, right? So you can actually reduce the remittance fees, right? You can reduce if someone's sending money from one country to another country. It's the fees are much less than you have now, which is, some of them are just crazy. If you ever looked at the fees for sending money across countries, so it helps with microfinance. It also is more efficient in supply chains, right? From a security standpoint, you can have more security on what happens throughout a supply chain. It can be pharmaceuticals, it could be food, so you have that more security, and also you have the greater transparency just with the blockchain in and of itself. And here's the key here. This is tying it together. Blockchain can be used to collect and verify ESG data, right? Because of what we talked about before, the security, the transparency. It can auto collect it through smart contracts. So there's a lot of things you can do with the blockchain technology and collecting ESG data for the governments and for the individual investors that are looking at that company. And then here's something just talking about how blockchain can be used from a environmental and social standpoint. It can be used, and just as one use case, going back to what Paresh said, Paresh, what are some good applications? Again, mine was talked about cryptocurrency and regulation, but here's another example, the blockchain for renewable energy, microgrids. Brooklyn in New York in the US is doing a proof of concept for using the blockchain network, the distributed aspect of it, to have microgrids for energy. And it's being, they're doing it now, and they're trying to see how that can work within New York. And that's just one example. And there's companies that actually do that, microgrids also. Smart meters, right, through smart contracts. You have the transparency aspect of it, where how much energy somebody's using and how much they're paying for it. Sometimes you can't, people unfortunately kind of game the system, and they charge more for certain individuals that use more energy, or certain individuals that don't have enough money. So through the blockchain technology, you can have these smart meters and actually see the transparency behind it. And then tokenized credits for the governments that have cap and exchange programs for ESG, right? Where you're able to tokenize credits for them, give them, but if they can follow the cap and exchange programs, the government can actually give them tokenized credits for their, their ratings for ESG. And then also you can, just like the social bonds that invest in social projects, companies that are doing something from a renewable energy standpoint, they can offer crowdfunding. They can offer a token on the blockchain network and say, here's an energy token, and you can invest in it, right? Which essentially becomes crowd sales, right? Selling of a coin becomes crowd sales. And finally, this is the OECD's case study on blockchain technologies, digital enabler for sustainable infrastructure. This is a paper they just released. There's a link down below it, just talking about how blockchain can be used for a sustainable infrastructure. And I'm not going to go through it too much because I know we're short on time, but for example, decentralized infrastructure, financing the infrastructures, which is one of the main focuses here, if you look at the grays. Emission identification through certified certificate programs, making sure that it's visible, that companies are following their carbon programs within each of the countries. We can go down to the last one, talking about from a public services standpoint from a country, talk about power sharing, as I just mentioned, P2P trading for the economy, traffic management platforms, global logistic capacity trading, stuff like that. So there is a lot of use cases for blockchain and the ability to use it from an ESG standpoint, from a company standpoint, but also from an investor and just a public person standpoint, that they can see that the company that they want to invest in or do their own social good by investing in these companies, see that they're actually doing what they're supposed to be doing. So the blockchain provides that transparency. And that's it. Thank you. That was a lot to say in a couple of minutes, Parash.
Thank you very much, Mark. A couple of things are very interesting. The microgrids for energy, the blockchain by microfinance, and then of course the sustainable infrastructure. So I will take this offline with you. I would like to introduce you to a couple of people who are strong supporters of CASI, Patrick, Santosh, and Suayu, for these things. Patrick is a risk management professional based in China. He works on sustainability and ESG issues. So he's a very strong supporter of CASI, and he's an integral part of CASI. But let's take this offline, because we will need a very long time to discuss how we can use these applications and pitch to our clients.
Exactly.
I, for one, would be very interested in microfinance and the microgrids, two departments of the government that I'm working with. So that is of interest to me. Let's go into Ishanji. Ishanji, your thoughts, your presentation, and one question before you begin, Ishanji. We saw a lot of things in Mark's presentation, microfinance, microgrid, and then of course a lot of other things like infrastructure. So is one of these things that you are currently working on at Tamil Nadu government?
Definitely, and I would like to talk a little bit about that.
Please.
So let me go share my screen if I may.
I apologize. I need to drop off for another meeting. I'm sorry, Sean. I didn't want to interrupt.
That's okay. No,
but thank you, everybody.
We will catch up again. Thank you.
Thank you. Great. So I hope my slides are visible.
Yes.
And I am audible, I hope. My voice is coming across nice and clear.
Absolutely.
Great, thanks. So I'm going to talk a little bit about blockchain and e-governance and why governments have been looking at blockchain to improve service delivery and to improve the lives of their citizens, right? So the first question I'll talk about is, why do governments need blockchain really? Because arguably one of the most centralized organizations in the world, why would it opt for a decentralized technology or a distributed technology? I'll talk a little bit about how adoption of blockchain has evolved within the government. So how governments are now moving from use cases to platforms, and sustainability plays a huge role in this movement or this migration. And lastly, we'll talk a little bit about how government can act as an enabler of blockchain. So essentially, governments play two roles within the blockchain story. The first one is as a user of blockchain technology. The second one is as an enabler. So basically creating an ecosystem so other players such as startups, private sector enterprises, regulators, auditors, etc. can leverage this technology for greater good. Right. So why do governments need blockchain really? So you would have noticed that despite this massive wave of digitization, a lot of processes and a lot of government workflows continue to be paper heavy. The reason for that is that while digitized data is great, it's easy to store, it's portable, it can be moved around, there are still certain aspects of paper based processes that do not exist in digitized processes or digitized data by default. So one of the best examples is that if you store digitized data in a centralized repository, if you have a rogue employee or if a malicious hacker gets to access it, he can change it very easily, and you will not have an audit log or you will not have a notification telling you that the data has been tampered. So this is really important from a government standpoint, because in government you have a lot of issues where the data is essentially gathered from one government entity or one government body, so to say, and then a scheme or a service is delivered by another department. So you need to have an underlying platform, you need to have a backbone that you can trust, that can really act as an anchor for all this digitized data. and ensure that if the data is tampered, there's an audit record that you can look at to know that the data has been modified. And this plays an important role for ensuring that all government processes become paperless, because if you see today, the paper intensive processes that we have, these are the ones that are between departments. So typically, let's say you go and you register a land transaction, and you need to go and change the property title on the land that you just bought. You would be required to take a printout of the transaction and then go to the second department because of these lacunas. So to solve that and to create a single point of view or a single touch point for the citizens, you would really need blockchain technology to step in. Right. So this talks a little bit about the reasons why governments need blockchain. So first is non-repudiation of digitized data, essentially what I just talked about. Second is for asset tracking and auditability. So both physical and digital assets. So physical assets can be rice, wheat, government equipment, defense supplies, etc. That is being moved from one state to the other or from one government entity to the other. Blockchain can help you track ownership between these various entities. The third is from a risk mitigation point of view, so both for internal and external risks. So an internal risk can be like a rogue employee or a rogue vendor trying to alter academic data or trying to alter a land transaction. So blockchain can help fight any such tampering that happens at the source. And you can also have external risks, which are basically such as a hacker trying to defame a government portal or a website. So here blockchain plays an important role. Lastly, and something that Nina also talked about interestingly, is about implementing privacy preserving mechanisms. So building a more secure identity mechanism or a more secure identity for citizens, which ensures that their data is not leaked, their data is secure. So in these four areas, blockchain can play a big role. Let's quickly look at what use cases essentially fall into these four categories that we spoke about. So when you talk about securing digital artifacts and data, some of the areas that we are looking at and governments around the world are looking at is obviously securing all kind of certificates, licenses, demographic data, receipts, all government websites and documents, etc. And that's probably the most popular government use case that you would find around the world right now, right from Estonia, which started implementing blockchain in 2009, to the EU blockchain team, which is implementing an EU-wide platform called EBSI. All of these entities are working largely with use cases that fall into this first quadrant. The second is use cases that deal with provenance and traceability of assets. So for benefits distribution, for example, in India, we have a public distribution system for rice and wheat. So for tracking physical assets that move through such a system, for tracking agricultural produce. So for example, if you have a certain agricultural produce that is GI tagged, or that can be certified as organic through blockchain, that is really something that can help increase agricultural incomes. Similarly, for tracking fertilizers, fertilizer subsidies, and other such assets. Land ownership and title transfers already has been spoken about a lot. Defense supply chains and resources. You can use it for tracking spurious drugs, so basically weeding out any fake medicines. And Mark talked about energy grids and microfinance earlier. So we are seeing a lot of interesting pilots in this space. We are working on a microfinance pilot. Apart from that, you would see Telangana has tried out a small pilot with women self-help groups on microfinance, where they operate an entire payment system on blockchain. With respect to energy grids, the state of UP in India has been trying out these auto reconciliation micro energy grids for solar energy, and they seem to be doing really well. One of the last and newer blockchain use cases in governments is CBDC, which is basically governments talking about issuing a cryptocurrency or a digital asset that is regulated by the government. So a lot of governments are looking into this. India has recently announced the digital rupee. Singapore is looking into this. Cambodia has already released their own CBDC, as has China. So this is again another interesting space, and it's expected to revolutionize cross-border remittance, settlement, etc. Coming to the last two sections, so interoperability and reconciliation is a benefit that is an inherent property of blockchains, essentially because they help you establish non-repudiation. So a lot of interdepartmental workflows, cross-departmental workflows such as passport verification or property plan sign-off can be executed through blockchain. A lot of cross-department schemes and services delivery, as well as auditability and ensuring that you have deduplicated data across entities. This is a problem that is probably specific to India. So in India, you have a problem where people will spell the native name in different spellings, and as a result, you end up with this with different spellings for the name of the same person, various departments and entities. So their blockchain can really play an important role by creating like a single golden record, which can act as a reference point, thus ensuring that someone is not delivered the same benefit twice, or someone is not able to, or someone is not cut out of the process, essentially. Lastly, I already spoke about identity and privacy. So there's a large rush to implement self-sovereign identities and better consent management systems. So these are essentially identities that are managed by citizens. So we are seeing a lot of consent management systems being built in blockchain for delivering services, for ensuring that health passports are more secure, and citizens can choose what data is shared with various stakeholders. These stakeholders can be government entities or private sector players or any other service provider. Okay, so just a brief.
Ishanji, one question.
Sure.
So,
Yeah.
How does the stakeholder choose which government agency should get what data? Where is it happening? How does this happen?
Sure. So self-sovereign identity has already been implemented to some level within the EBSI ecosystem in EU, and we are now starting to do this. So this is a very interesting use case. So imagine how you access a lot of services in India right now, right? So if you go to a cyber cafe, if you go to a hotel, typically it would ask you for a copy of your Aadhaar card or a copy of your PAN card, etc., to establish your age, your address, and so on and so forth, right? So what we are trying to do is we are trying to build an identity for citizen, where when you walk into such an establishment, you basically do a verification through either your smartphone or through, I mean, we have not yet worked out an offline wallet. We are mostly working with a smartphone wallet as of now. So basically, you share whatever detail needs to be shared with the stakeholder. So, for example, if you're walking into a hotel, the owner of the hotel just needs to know your address, where you're coming from. He doesn't need to know your age or how much money you make or other details about it. If you walk into a cyber cafe, he just needs to know what your actual name is, so you can be identified in the future. And what we do is that through this wallet, you can choose what fields you want to share with the service provider, and an audit log is captured of that verification process on the blockchain. Reason being that if you look at why these service providers keep a copy of the Aadhaar card or PAN card, it's for legal purposes. So if the cops come tomorrow and they want to know details about you, they can share that paper copy. So instead of that, we will store a digitized record that is secured by the blockchain. That's how we are implementing these systems. Same for consent management as well.
This is very good news actually.
Right,
Because
yeah.
this is what I am always worried about. In India, 25 insurance companies have my Aadhaar card.
Right.
Over 10 non-life insurance companies have my Aadhaar card. Some
Right,
15
yeah.
card companies have a copy of my Aadhaar card. So basically, I
Right.
think around 100 million people have a copy of my Aadhaar card. So
That's true, yeah. That's
everybody
a
here
big
in
privacy
Bengal has
violation.
my Aadhaar card copy.
Right.
So,
I mean,
yeah.
even for small things, right? If you walk into like a mall and you have to register for loyalty points, they'll ask for your phone number, right? So that's again a very small privacy violation that happens over there. Whereas all he needs is a way to get in touch. Anyway.
No, so this is interesting. Now, I have one more question for you.
Sure,
if we can move on to the questions, is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine. I think I'll just.
Tell me, I am an advisor to a microfinance company, and we are a
Sure,
small microfinance company. So, 70, 80 million US dollar company.
sure.
So how does implementing blockchain help us? On the contrary, it will raise our cost to a level where, we won't be able to survive. So, how do you envisage that microfinance companies of $100 million
So
start
again,
using?
one of the things with blockchain is that it should not be looked at a silver bullet. If you try to fire it at everything, it will not fire effectively. But if I
Hmm.
take the example of the women's self-help group for which a microfinance platform was implemented in Telangana, so the operation cost of running bank accounts and then managing the reconciliation, and because you have also worked in banking, right? So I'm sure you're aware of all the operation costs and the security costs, etc., that go into running accounts for an ecosystem like this one. So their blockchain is really helpful because what it's really allowing you to do is you're running this ledger that's reconciling transactions automatically, right? So your only real cost is getting this technology running and providing them with an interface which can either be like a feature phone or a smartphone for firing transactions and then checking their balance. So from an operations point of view, your cost comes down drastically. In fact, something very interesting we saw at ICICI Bank is when we rolled out our first pilot, the head of operations who we were dealing with, he came to me and said, this is great. We don't have to do anything. This reconciles automatically. So I would definitely recommend this to the head of my vertical moving forward because it reduces a lot of the effort that we have to put in. So that's really how it helps in the micro payments case because your cost per account comes down.
Yeah, so we can probably pitch it to the government of Maharashtra.
Sure, that I would be happy to help you with that. Yeah.
I hope Santosh is listening and making notes. No, that was that was uncalled for, Santoshji. But yeah, thank you for that. Because I have always been wondering, we cannot probably pick up the cost of doing anything in blockchain in any of the companies. If you're a $100 million company, you can't really um, put your profits in that. So we come to the end of our session for the day. Do you have any questions, Patrick, Santoshji, Aiden, Varun? Anyone? Any questions, please?
And none from my side. It's been very good and informative session for me.
Done. Then I have a couple of questions, but Patrick will have questions. Patrick, your questions, please.
Okay, well, I think I've mentioned this before on a blockchain, but I'm not sure. When it comes to going from the paper to the digital, one of the things it sounds like is it's quicker, right? So quicker, I think, is good in many cases, but is there any risk when things go too quickly? For example, I remember there was one guy on a blockchain conference on CASI before who said you could sell a house, like you could come home and you could sell a house like in 5 minutes. And if someone's had too many beers and he sells the house by mistake, and then his wife comes home and she's quite unhappy with that. But otherwise, selling a house is quite difficult. There's a paper process, and stupid mistakes can then be stopped through that, right? And also the fraud aspect of that. If it goes very quickly, someone who is smart could do a legal trade or whatever using the speed where there would be no comeback. Is that an issue?
So that's a great question, Patrick. So I think that answers the question that why the Bitcoin blockchain is slow, right? So it's never going to be as fast as digitized processes because you need that reconciliation to happen on a peer-to-peer network. And yeah, to answer your question, obviously that risk is there that if something happens fast, I might lose access to my assets, and that doesn't get spoken about as much when it comes to blockchain. But then again, you have this whole thread going about building secure blockchain products and blockchain processes. So anytime you have a hack, and this is really why the public blockchain space is great because it's really a Wild West sort of an ecosystem, right? So people who are entering the public blockchain space for trading cryptocurrencies, they understand that there's an inherent risk. So by the time these technologies come to more conventional processes like buying and selling land or registering identity, they have already gone through a robust testing process, right? So that's a great question, but yeah, the answer to that would be that a lot of work is happening in that space, and it's still not as fast as conventional digitized processes, right? So that's the reason the Bitcoin network is slower than Visa, because Visa just does messaging. The Bitcoin network does settlement. That's why it takes a 10-minute window or an hour to settle a transaction. It isn't as fast as Visa. So I hope that answers your question.
Well, I just want to clarify. I mean, I'm not talking about fraud where they hack into, because that's a
Right.
separate risk issue, I would say, which I don't understand at all. It's a concern that I have, right? If everything goes onto blockchain and then someone says we want to hack this because the opportunity is there, but I'm thinking of a completely legal. So if I'm someone who wants to con someone, and I then look at the legal framework, and then I fool someone to say, yeah, give me this, and then they give it to me, and it looks afterwards as a completely legal trade, and the person's being fooled. So that's
I
where the
understand that.
speed. Yeah.
I understand
Sometimes
that. So
slow is good.
right. I understand that. So to answer your question, how solution providers are dealing with that right now is that they are still relying on biometric in certain cases when to authenticate. So, for example, the Election Commission of India is building a remote voting solution, and they were trying out a pilot a couple of months back. So the authentication would be a two-factor authentication. So the first is you do a biometric authentication, then you sign with a private key that belongs to you. So you're correct. I mean, those concerns are always there, and then you'll have to figure out a workaround for these things to go through.
Well,
So which is why these self-sovereign identities, etc., are important.
Well, one possible solution is just to make it slow, right? I mean, even if it could be fast,
right?
You could make it slower with certain steps. That means that people like me who are non-technical can be protected. Someone
So
can
you
find
could
out,
opt
Patrick,
just
don't do that.
not to use the system. In fact, one of the things that we are doing is that so these fancy inter-department services that I spoke about, so it's purely on consent basis. So you as a citizen choose that I want to go in for this service, and these are primarily for low value transactions in the sense that the financial implications are low, at least for the time being. Right. So yeah, I mean, you could choose not to go for it. I mean, that's at least how we are dealing with it right now, and hopefully it will evolve in the future.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ishanji, for that. It was wonderful to hear your opinion. With that, we come to the end of our session. Let's catch up offline on this, Ishanji, on the microfinance thing. We can definitely make a pitch or two to the governments. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.